I turned this into this, and in this video I'm going to show you how you can as well. The inspiration came when I saw this cute green striped Abercrombie top with the lace panel in the front, and when I came across this coral striped long sleeve top from Thrift store, I figured I could definitely sew this myself. If you're anything like me, you've seen a lot of these vintage Abercrombie and Hollister tops being sold for like $300 on Depop. If you're interested in doing it yourself, keep watching. And if you're interested in doing stuff like this in general, feel free to subscribe. For the materials required, we'll need fabric scissors, fabric clips and pins, a measuring tape, and fabric markers. We'll need some elastic, buttons, a serger, a sewing machine, a long sleeve shirt. I'm showing here the sleeves. I picked this one because it had these long sleeves with buttons on them. It felt very reminiscent of what vintage Abercrombie looked like, and the cotton was a big draw for me as well. We'll also need a shirt that has some lace paneling on it. Here you can see I'll be cutting out this portion to sew onto my finished shirt. A reference shirt is helpful in this case. So firstly, what we're going to do is line up our reference shirt to the shirt that we'll be cutting into, and then eventually we're going to be cutting off the excess sleeves as well as the excess on the bust. Once we have those cut out, we're going to take it over to the serger and just sew the sleeves closed. Here I'm just seam ripping out the collar of this shirt. I want to use it later, but first I'll be needing to create a scoop neck for this, but I want to basically cut off the collar so I can use it at a later time. I'm now lining up the center of the neckline, I'm measuring it just to find that middle point and giving it a little snip. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this into a scoop neckline. Now we're going to be basically cutting the top part of the shirt away from the bottom part of the shirt. Now, cut out the lace panels from your scrap shirt, which will be going on top of the bust area of the shirt that we're making. Here what I'm doing is I'm cutting the front of the upper half in half, and on the original shirt it has these buttons that actually function. I wanted to give the illusion of buttons, but I didn't actually want to give it the ability to open up. So basically I'm cutting it in half and then I will be sewing it together on my serger. Once I have my lace panels lined up, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to serge them on to our top. And then for parts of this, I did need to sew it by hand, but as long as you get them attached on there, that's all we're looking for. now that we have the lace attached, all I'm doing is I'm taking the collar that we cut off earlier and I'm just attaching it here. I'm going to go ahead and after I get the pins put on there, I'm going to be using my sewing machine to sew this onto the neckline. Once we have those two lace panels attached to the front, we're going to use the serger just to sew it closed. And then later we'll be adding some buttons onto it just to give it the appearance that it could actually open, but we're sewing it closed. Here I'm showing you the holes that are in the two sides underneath the armpits, and this is where the side ties that we create are going to be sewn in. We're going to use a serger to sew them in basically a couple inches underneath the armpit. And for the actual strings themselves, I used the excess sleeves we cut off earlier just to make these little ties basically, and then we'll be using a serger to sew those together as well. So this is my first attempt at attaching the top part to the bottom part, and I wanted to keep it in just so you could hopefully learn from my mistakes. But basically, I attached this and it was just, the bottom was way too wide. So, and then the top part where the lace panel is on ended up being way too long. But that's okay. It's easier to remove things than to add them back on. So we'll keep watching and I fix it later. So here I am detaching the top from the bottom. I tried it on. It's important to try things on as you're sewing to make sure everything looks right. And in this case, it didn't look right. The panel that had the lace on it was way too long for the bust area, so I ended up taking about 2 inches off, like 1.5, 2 inches. Once again, you can always take more off later. It's best to cut 1 inch, try it back on, take more off if you need. The other thing that I noticed was that the bottom panel was way too wide at the top where basically the waist is. So what I'm doing here is I'm basically just taking a couple inches off each side. I'm flipping it over so it will be even on each side, and then I'll be using the serger to sew those sides up. So now that I have the bottom panel a little bit thinner, I'm using my pins to attach it to the top, and what I'll also be doing is using an elastic band when I sew this on so that it has more of a kind of snug fit to it, which is what we want to be right below the bust. For the very last step, all we're going to be doing here is hand sewing on 3 buttons. I used a ruler just to ensure that they're, close enough to equal distance apart, but once we do this, we'll be all finished. This is the finished product. I am super thrilled with the way that it came out. It definitely beats spending a ton of money online to buy one when you can just make it yourself. I hope you guys enjoy, and if you like this, please subscribe.